How about 36 straight weeks of golf? How about the show of record called Cash Out with the Coaches? How about a brand new platform, a brand new sponsor, Sports Pub Media, and we are back. Show number 1 of 2021. Mr. Travis Fulton is there. I am the coach here, and Travis, the Sentry Tournament of Champions starts on Thursday, and my brother, I am here for it.
I am here for it. Aloha PGA Tour is back-to-back tournaments in Hawaii. Of course, we're going to start at the Plantation Course at Kapalua, the Sentry Tournament of Champions, and then they'll go over to the Sony Open. And I'm going to be looking at your face every single week, Coach, for the next 40 weeks, taking some cold, hard cash from you. How do you feel about that?
You know, like my good buddy The Rock used to say, oh, that's the face you're going to be looking at. By the way, coming up in 5 minutes, the great Clay Travis from OutKick and Fox Sports Radio will be our first guest here on the show as well. You don't want to miss what he has to say about the world of sports betting and golf betting. But every single week at the start of the show, we're going to do 5 or 6 minutes to preview the tournament, kind of tell everybody at home the kind of players they should be looking out for, how the course is playing, what the course is, and all that kind of good stuff. This week, normally, Travis, it's about just players who won last year. But because of the way 2020 went, they've also allowed anybody that qualified for the Tour Championship to come and play in this tournament as well. So 45 players qualified, 42 are here. I still don't understand why a guy like Rory McIlroy, who got so criticized in the offseason for not being motivated, wouldn't show up and play.
Well, I think he might be playing on the European Tour here in a couple of weeks. So I think he's going to be spending a lot of time here in the United States. I think so perhaps he decided to just have a couple of weeks over there, get his season started, and then make his way over there. Who knows with Rory, right? We know that the motivation could be still a question mark. He's got a new child. But, Coach, we've got 42 guys here, right? We have 42 players in the field. And, this is one of my favorite tournaments. I remember growing up in Northern Idaho, the snow's on the ground, week 1.
Oh,
Sentry Tournament of Champions. There's beautiful Kapalua, these beautiful pictures of the ocean, elevation changes. I knew I couldn't play golf yet. We were still a couple months away, but I wanted to see Hawaii. This is a par 73. You don't see a lot of par 73s, Coach. The Plantation Course. You only got 3 par 3s here. Plays about 7,600 yards. And let me remind you, this was the first core Crenshaw designed golf course. Now, they've become staples in this industry, but this was their very first one that they did. It's a big property, as I mentioned, beautiful ocean views, big greens, wide fairways. I actually had Mark Rolfing on the podcast. It's called the Stripe Show Podcast. You know about it, Coach. It's one of the best ones.
Well, 1 second. I got to pick up the name you just dropped.
And, Mark is Mr. Hawaii. He's been there for 40 years. You see him on Golf Channel, NBC, just a terrific guy. And, he had some really interesting things to say. The big time elevation changes in this course is something that a lot of first timers have some difficulty with. Mm-hmm. The other part of it is there's a lot of uneven lies, not just in the fairways, but around the greens. This is probably the most slope you're going to see on a golf course on the PGA Tour. A lot of wind. We're looking at 15, 20 miles an hour in the forecast. So they're going to have to manage that. But the other thing that's really interesting here, Coach, you will see players aiming further away from where they want the ball to end up, more on this golf course than any other venue, perhaps on the PGA Tour. So there's a lot of things here to kind of take into consideration. That's why a lot of the first time comers here don't do well. We got to keep that in mind with a Finau, with a Harris English. But I plug all this into my model, Coach, into my model. And what the model has spit out here is we know strokes gain approach. I'm preaching to the choir. It's up here. But what we got to pay attention to this week is the approach game with the wedges. 50 to 125 yards is a key stat here. So we got to pay attention to that. Right under that, strokes gain putting, we've got Bermuda. It's only 10 on the stimp. It's slow, but there's a lot of slope here. So they have to keep the green speeds down in that 10 area so they don't lose pin location. So keep that in mind. And then strokes gain off the tee. Look, there's no rough, big fairways. Guys that spray it probably are still going to be in play. So there's not a real premium here on accuracy. Everybody's going to kind of just, blow it out there and have some short grass to deal with, but move strokes gain around the green here. Guys are going to hit fairways. Guys are going to hit greens. We've got to be a strong wedge player. We got to be able to manage the Bermuda, and that's the kind of player that I'm looking for.
And those are always really good stats, and that's why we're going to do a preview every week, because it's important when you're talking about golf betting, and that's what this show is essentially is. It's a golf betting show, and all those little nuggets are important when you're talking about head-to-head matchups, when you're talking about if a guy's going to finish top 20 or drift at the end and fall back into a top 40 finish or whatever the case might be. A couple of nuggets to keep in mind. Only 7 first-timers this week, 7 of the 42 coming for the first time. There hasn't been a back-to-back winner at this event since, wait for it, Jeff Ogilvy in 2009 and 2010. He won both years, which I was shocked at that. And here's the final nugget before we get to Clay Travis, that the last 4 winners at the Sentry Tournament of Champions, how about this? The last 4, I wrote this down to make sure I was right, have finished in the top 5 of the FedEx Cup standings at the end of the season.
Yeah.
The last 4. So think about that when you're making your future bets, when you're thinking about who's going to have a good season, all that kind of stuff. The last 4 finished top 5. Okay, we're going to get to our competition and our picks coming up a little bit later on. But right now, we're so excited, because several weeks we're going to have a guest on the show when it makes sense. And we're going to bring in one of the leading voices in the sports community. He is polarizing, he is honest, and he has OutKick. He's the morning voice of Fox Sports Radio. So right now we're excited to bring in Mr. Clay Travis from Fox Sports Radio and OutKick. When you hear the words like innovative, pivot, change, embrace sports betting, our very first guest on Cash Out with the Coaches, he's all of those things. The voice of Fox Sports Radio, the CEO, founder of OutKick, Mr. Clay Travis is here. Clay, thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you guys having me. I don't know that any of those adjectives apply, but they're better than a lot of the ones I see on a daily basis elsewhere, so I'll take them.
Nobody bulldozes through social media like you do, and I'm here for it. I really am. But we're a brand new show in golf betting, sports betting, and you clearly at OutKick, because I follow everything you do, and a lot of what I do, I model after what you do. When did you make a conscious decision that sports betting was going to be a big part of what you guys do?
Honestly, about 15 years ago. It's been a long time, but I wasn't a kid who was raised. Like, I remember my dad saying, hey, you bet on sports, it's going to be less entertaining to you. So my dad wasn't a gambler, but I was always fascinated, still am, by stock market, by valuations, by market moves in general. And so I would say around the time I was about 16 or 17 years old, I started to kind of pay attention to the point spread in general. Back in those days, used to have to flip all the way to the back of the newspaper, and they would publish the point spread back there, and you could go through and look at it. And as I got into college, I started paying a lot more attention to it. I started to gamble occasionally, started to understand sort of some of the basic terminology. And then as I moved into the sports industry, I just found that my friends and everybody that I was talking about on a regular basis, rather than sit around and argue about who was going to win and things like that, we were talking about the point spreads, over-unders a lot. And so I kind of got the sense, and I really do believe, that sports gambling was the next big thing, right? In my life, and I'm 41, I would say there are 3 transformative things that have occurred in sports, right? The first was cable. All of a sudden, you could watch every game. People around my age are kind of right on that edge where you might remember listening to a game that you were really interested in, right? Like, I remember as a kid going to bed at night, listening to AM baseball radio games, like trying to keep tabs on them after I had to turn the television off. And I remember even going and having to check a newspaper to see who was going to win a game or what the box score was and things like that. Nowadays, my kids think that's crazy. First thing they do, wake up, get on YouTube, ironically, and watch all the highlights of whatever games happened the night before. Whereas you or I might have gotten up before school, had cereal, watched SportsCenter. That's completely kind of changed the way that they experience sports. So that was number one. Number 2 was fantasy sports and the ease with which fantasy sports could be played on the internet. And I think number 3 is going to be sports gambling. And I'm not sure there's going to be another iteration. I'm sure there is. But those are the 3 that I think are going to define sort of sports in general in my life in a transformative way.
You know, Clay, we see it happening now in golf. You know, all the big companies are starting to align here. Fantasy golf, of course, was kind of the first, but now you're seeing the more direct line sports betting. So when you look at golf, right, and you look at sports betting in golf, it seems to be really gaining a lot of momentum right now and really spreading across the country. Fantasy golf is huge. I believe it's like right there behind football right now. But how do you see the growth of sports betting in golf and where it's going right now?
I love it. And what I love about it is you can oftentimes get good paydays and you can bet on multiple golfers. So I bet every major. I have for years and years now. Pick a couple of guys that I think is going to win. Usually I bet 4 or 5 different guys. Some outliers, some favorites, to have sort of a portfolio of golfers in any given tournament. And I just think it makes it wildly more entertaining. I enjoy watching the day-to-day movement in the lines after the first round, second round, as you move through. And I think you're right about the overall interest level growing. And I think sports are really smart if they lean into it. Let's be honest. Some of the biggest gamblers out there are golfers, not only in their own golfing pursuits, but also they tend to be really big football fans, really big basketball fans. I mean, I talk to a lot of those guys on a regular basis. They're really committed to college football because many of them played college golf. And they're out there, you talk to some of those guys, they're like the worst thing about playing golf sometimes into September back when they did the FedEx was they're on the course when the games are actually taking place. And they want to know first thing they come off the course is, hey, what happened in that game? Or they've got the game recorded on their DVR and they're trying to, cover their ears because they want to go experience it as a fan. But these guys are monster college sports fans, NFL fans. And I think it just makes a ton of sense for golf, NASCAR, sports that are sometimes niche to expand that audience of people that might be paying attention to it and let them put a little bit of money on the outcome. It makes people more likely to watch.
Yeah, to Clay's point, the PGA Tour is really leading into DraftKings. They're really leading in to a lot of these different companies that are doing this fantasy, but also sports gambling as well. Last year, anybody that follows you, Clay, you were very bullish right when the pandemic started that start buying stocks of sports gambling companies. How much do you think the pandemic and COVID helped push ahead, not just golf betting, but sports betting in general?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So the sports gambling companies got destroyed in the early, even, the stock market was down to 18,000. The Dow was anyway. I mean, even within the context of everybody doing poorly, the sports gambling companies got destroyed. And what I felt like, and I ended up being right about this, was the sports leagues were going to find a way to play. And I think that they deserve a tremendous amount of praise. NBA, Major League Baseball, PGA, NHL, certainly the NFL, and college football and college basketball now in general. I just felt like they weren't going to stay out forever. And if you went back and listened to me on my radio show, which we had to do daily, 3 hours, even with zero sports to talk about. If you went back and listened to that radio show, what you would have heard pretty clearly is, hey, I think by June and July, these leagues are going to be back. They're going to find a way to do it. And I think what happened was all those sports gambling companies got oversold. But what it required them to do was even lean into the future much more so, right? The Amazons, in terms of buying online and shopping online and delivery and everything else, the future is beyond a shadow of a doubt for everybody to be able to vote and gamble, I should say, God forbid vote, should be able to vote to gamble right from their phone, vote on who you think is going to win in a game in real time. And in my home state of Tennessee, we've got that now. But the idea of having to stand in line at a casino window in Vegas as a way to get your bets in for the NCAA tournament, I think, 5 years from now, everybody is going to be able to wager on their phones. And I think what it did was accelerate the adoption. And furthermore, all these state governments are hemorrhaging cash, and they're looking for ways to raise revenue without having to raise taxes on everybody. And I think it's going to be an easy thing to point to and say, hey, we could make a lot more tax dollars instead of this being handled from bookies, under the table. How about the state gets involved in the same way they did with lotteries? And what I think, and it's a smart question, but I think what this did was accelerate that. But also, if you remember back in the day when state lottery started, one of the top ways that it got driven into even more popularity was people got mad about seeing all the cars from their state driving into a neighboring state to buy a lottery ticket.
Right,
And you're
that's
thinking
right.
this was a big deal in my home state of Tennessee. Wait a minute, people are driving down to Georgia and they're buying all these lottery tickets in Georgia. You can sit and watch all those tax dollars. And it's not just, by the way, the tax dollars that go for the lottery tickets at the time. You would drive into Georgia and fill up your tank of gas while you're buying lottery tickets. You might go out to dinner. You might, buy things inside of that store that had nothing to do with the lottery. And that's what's happening now. There are a lot of people driving across the state to place wagers. You've seen it happen everywhere. States get smart to that. Eventually, I think we'll have, 44, 45 states with different degrees of sports gambling.
Let me ask you a question, Clay, about the athletes. Because I know you're across all sports. You're talking football, you're talking basketball, and I know you're a big fan of golf as well. You look at the younger generation of golf, these guys like Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas. These guys are very transparent. When you interview them, they're going to tell you what's on their mind. They are upfront and very transparent. Do you find this transparency, say this younger generation, early 20s, mid 20s, is that consistent across other sports, do you feel?
Well, I think it's easier to be transparent when you don't have to worry about how your teammates are going to react, right? If you're a solo sport athlete, you can really kind of come out and say exactly what you think because other people don't have to answer questions about what you think. And I think that makes it a lot easier for golfers to come out and say exactly what they think, much like in a different sport entirely. A boxer can say something that a quarterback couldn't because, there's not 21 other guys that are starting that have to answer for them, plus special teams and everything else. I also think the younger guys in general are very much about being authentic to themselves. And they see that that's what works on social media platforms. And so they are more likely to be outspoken about anything than maybe past athletes have been. And then the other thing I would say, and certainly we saw this with President Trump, I think when you have a phone in your hand, it allows you to embrace emotion, both good and bad, in ways that people who grew up in other generations did not. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure 25 years ago, my dad was really angry about the way that a football game ended, but he didn't have his phone to pull, his cell phone to pull out and immediately emote out into the masses and say exactly what he was feeling. And even sports writers didn't, right? They had 12 hours where they could sit back before their column ended up in the newspaper. It was a more reasoned, tempered analysis by and large. What the internet thrives on, and social media thrives on in particular, is emotion. And so good or bad, right? It can be positive, it can be negative. And I think that's why we have such massive vacillations on a day-to-day basis, oftentimes in terms of how people think about things, whether it's the president of the United States pulling out his phone and being upset about something he saw on television, or your average sports fan whose team just missed a field goal and they're suddenly going to seek out the kicker and say all sorts of awful things about the kicker that probably they would not say in real life, but certainly if they waited a day would be much less likely to say as well.
If you are brand new to the world of sports betting or golf betting, you can take about 10 or 15 nuggets out of this interview right here and apply it to yourself and your life. And you can listen to Clay Travis every single day on Fox Sports Radio and follow him on social media, OutKick, also Jason Whitlock. What you have going, Clay, is incredible. I've got a ton of respect for you, and thank you for coming on and kind of setting the stage for us to really get Cash Out with the Coaches started. Thank you very much.
I wish you guys well in your show. You guys are both very talented as well, and I appreciate you guys having me on and hope people enjoy it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Clay. Appreciate it.
Well, I got to tell you, Clay Travis knows so much about sports betting and the finance world. That was really great to have him on, Travis.
It was. And I follow him. He's polarizing, right? He puts it out there. He's transparent. And that was awesome to have him a part of the show here, getting things going, educating. He's been so far out in front with sports gambling. That was awesome, Coach. Well done.
You know what else is awesome is the fact that Sports Pub Media is now our new platform. They're our new sponsor. They have bought the show, and they reached out to me privately, Travis. I got a private phone call from James, and he says, Coach, don't tell Travis this, but I want you to kick his ass.
Okay.
Every single week. That was a direct quote from our sponsor.
Yeah.
So it's now time because we're turning this into a competition. We want everybody at home to play along on Twitter at Cash Out with the Coaches, or at Cash Out Coaches. And then our hard launch around the Players Championship, for those that beat us every week, we'll do a drawing, and then they will win a prize. And that's how they're going to really be interactive with the show. So, Cody, I want you to put up the rules on the screen, please. Here's what it looks like. 5 different picks every week. We've got $100 to use. We'll put a dollar value on 2 head-to-head matchups, top 20 pick, a tournament winner, and a wild card play. Any pick of our choosing. So it's very simple. It's very simple to play along at home. Travis, you're going to go first. Give me your pick. Give me your dollar amount. Let's go.
Well, the first winner this year in 2020, we're going to go with Mark Leishman. He started talking about Jeff Ogilvy, right? Back-to-back winners. Let's stay with the Aussie. I'm going with Leash, plus 160 over the Florida Gator, Billy Horschel. You know, Leishman did not play well post-COVID. You know, when they came back, he was like Rory, had a hard time getting things going, just kind of lost his approach game, which is usually his strength. But as of late, you start to see some signs here with Leash. He's starting to play better golf. I think he's recharged the battery. Rumor has it he's ready to go. This is a course that he loves, Coach. T4 here last year, or in 2019. He was T7 back in 2018. And you hear the term horses for courses. This course is made for Mark Leishman. The wide fairways, check. He's not a particularly accurate driver of the golf ball. He can just set up. I'm sure he loves it and just wails away at it. Approach game, check. Remember what I said about that wedge play? Did you write that down? That wedge play, you wrote that down? Right. Top 10 on the PGA Tour when you're looking from that 50 to 125 yards. Remember that now. That's going to be, those are big distances here into these greens. And you just can't be hitting greens. You've got to get in the right shelf, in the right portion to be putting at the hole from the right part of the greens. Around the green, he struggles. Don't worry about that here. Don't worry about strokes gained, short game. Got to have a great short game around the green. Move that to the bottom. His best surface is Bermuda. So I like Leishman in the way that he can just kind of let the driver go, take advantage of his approach game. He's a good putter on Bermuda greens. This is a safe bet. Leash plus 160 over Billy Horschel.
There's a couple of reasons I love this bet for you. A, because remember I told you there's guys that qualified for the Tour Championship that got invited here. Billy Horschel is one of those guys, which means he's playing good golf. And the fact that I love this pick and I love Billy Horschel, so I think it's a bad pick for you. That's why I love that you made it.
Oh, you love the pick because I went the wrong way.
You went the wrong way.
Okay.
And also people at home that watch the show every single week and become fans of the show, they're going to quickly realize that you're a stats guy. You like to look at the numbers. I'm a gut guy. I play off my gut when it comes to my handicapping of golf. So my first head-to-head pick.
Okay.
By the way, how much money did you put on Mark Leishman?
Oh, excuse me. Let me go back here. It's $20. I'm putting $20 out of my 100 allotment on Leishman.
Okay, $20 for you. All right, so my first pick is also a $20 pick. But I'm going to go back to a guy who finished, wait for it, second at what? The Masters in November. A guy that won me a lot of money in 2020, and I foresee him doing it again in 2021. That's Cameron Smith. And he's taking on Scotty Scheffler, plus 105. So I'm giving people plus money against a guy who, yes, he shot a 59 in the FedEx Cup playoffs, but ever since he got COVID, he just hasn't been the same golfer. I don't think he plays well this week, at least not well enough to beat a guy who's in form from the Masters. Cameron Smith, $20 plus 105.
That's a fair bet. You know, I looked at that one. I considered it with Cameron Smith, but you know what the difference between you and I, you made money on Cameron Smith second at the Masters. I made money on Dustin Johnson first at the Masters. That's the difference.
True.
That's why you're getting that support from our sponsor and other people. They're calling you because they want you to, come on, coach, stay in it. Let's go.
That is true. That's it. I can't dispute that. All right. What's your second pick?
All right. Second, I really did look at that one. I'm going to agree with you on that pick. Hideki Matsuyama is my next pick, minus 125 over Finau. And let's put, we're going to put $15 on him. I'm going to save a little bit here towards the end. Another guy that's had success here, coach, at this venue. He was back in 2018. He was T7. 2017, he was second. So this is a guy that likes this golf course, plays well here, kind of fits his mold. He can kind of spray it off the tee a little bit, but he's a fantastic approach game player, wonderful approach wedge player. I think these slower greens tend to probably help Hideki. There's certain putts where you'll see the slope where they'll look very fast, but 10 on the stimp is very slow for the PGA Tour. So you're going to be seeing some slow putts. So I think that tends to probably help a putter like Hideki Matsuyama, who can struggle from time to time with the flat stick. And he finished the season well. I mean, Hideki found some form, and I think very quietly had a good season last year. He was tied for second at Houston. He was tied for 13th at the Masters. So I think Hideki at minus 125 is a good bet. And we know Finau, right? We know Finau didn't get into this venue by winning a tournament because he's only got one win.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Point.
That didn't happen.
And like I predict on the preview show last week, Finau's going to get it going when we get to California, when we get down to Waste Management, where he's played well in the past. You think of a Finau, his strength is the distance and the longer approach game, the longer irons. It's not the shorter irons, and he struggles on Bermuda grass. So to me, this isn't the best venue for Finau. It fits Hideki. He's had some success here. So give me Matsuyama, $15 over Finau minus 125.
See, I'm really glad that you went down to $15 because I love this pick, and I almost had Hideki as a top 10 wildcard pick, and then I switched it at the last minute because he's now back in the form of those backdoor top 20s that you talked about. And in the process, when you put him in a head-to-head matchup, he usually on a Sunday shoots a quiet 67 to finish T9, T10, and that usually leaps ahead of whoever we pick him against. I love that pick for you. Thank God it's only $15. All right, my guy. And I don't like to pick anything that's more than minus 150 because we're really trying to give good quality picks that people can really bet real money on. So with that being said, my second head-to-head pick, when I saw this number, I said, I got to jump at it. Dustin Johnson, the guy you picked to win the Masters, he's only minus 130. He won this event 2 years ago. Well, technically 3 years ago. Over Jon Rahm, I'm putting $25 on this matchup. 25. When you talk about a guy in his last 6 starts or 7 starts, 3 wins and 3 runner-ups in his last 7 starts, hasn't finished outside of the top 6, that means Jon Rahm is going to have to finish top 6. I'll make that bet, only laying $30. Sometimes the juice is worth the squeeze. And Dustin Johnson over Jon Rahm is worth it for me. He's my second head-to-head pick.
Coach, let me say this to you about a player who got to the number 1 ranking in the world last year, right? Is currently ranked number 2. One of the best players in the game. Won a couple times last year. Big time season, right? And he switched every club in his bag going into this year. He has went with a brand new equipment, right? Clubs and ball, putting it in play for the first time this week. Didn't work for Sergio. Didn't work for Justin Rose. I don't know. It just makes no sense to me, these players. I know it's about cash. I get it. But we're talking all 14 clubs eventually and a ball different this week for Jon Rahm.
Do you remember when Brooks Koepka a couple of years ago, he had that big offer and he had just won those majors and all these companies are calling him and he was like playing with 3 wedges from this company and 2 wedges from this company. He's like, why would I do that? I'm making so much money over here. It's going to cost me, even if I get the big check over here. I agree with you. Why did these players do it? Other than the fact that maybe when he signed this deal, I know he's a big tailor-made guy. Maybe he signed a deal that within 2 years he had to do this. I don't know. But it doesn't make any sense when he's playing as well as he's playing. Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think he really struggles this week. Okay, next up, top 20 pick. Who do you got, Travis?
Well, I'm going to give you a minus 350 here, top 20. And remember, there's only 42 people in the field. Okay, there's only 42 people in the field. I'm putting $25 on your boy, Patrick Reed, who had a very good season last year. Yes. Very good season. Won WGC Mexico to get into this and, lost in a playoff last year. Was T2 here last year, lost in a playoff to JT, who won it, of course. Xander was in there. He was T6 here in 2017. He was second in 2016. I think one thing to keep in mind last year with Patrick, he was positive 9.3 strokes gained putting. Likely he's not going to do that, but that's kind of what Patrick does when you, that's a ton. Yeah, you're not going to repeat that very often, but Patrick can be streaky with the putter. when he starts filling them up, he fills them up. We saw it at Mexico. We saw it at Memorial. We saw it here last year. He'll get into that +6, 7, 9 once in a while and really get a heater going with the putter. But I think with Patrick, he's playing some good golf. He's working with David Ledbetter. I see a lot of stuff they post. I think in particular on the driver, Reed can get kind of sprayed a little bit with the driver. Again, I think this course is favorable to that. I think with the wind blowing, the uneven lines, there's a lot of elements to manage here, like to kind of grind out. And I think Patrick does well in these scenarios. He can let his wedge game go to work. He's a beautiful wedge player, catch some fire with the putter. I think Patrick Reed is a lock inside the top 20 at this golf course, but you're going to pay for it. $25 -350.
I think that this is a perfect point of the show for our disclaimer that Sports Pub always promotes money management and making sure you get the right bet at the right number. And this is not the right number. -350.
I know.
Are you serious? That's
it was kind of
it
kind of fell apart.
That's okay. That's
but
okay.
He's going to be in the top 20.
Pick.
It's a top 20. It's a top 20.
So essentially, it's a top 50% is what we're saying. There's 42 players. He has to beat 22 is all he has to do. So this week, I don't have an issue laying 350. Now, if you talk to me next week, I got an issue laying 350. All right, my top 20 pick, I'm going with a guy who's been red hot for most of the second half of 2020. It wasn't that long ago that he was trying to play on the Korn Ferry Tour and just try to compete in Q School, essentially Q School, to get back to the PGA Tour. But now he has cemented himself, his game. He's playing at a high level, played great at the U.S. Open this year, and that's Harris English. And to show you how much he has increased his value in Vegas, we just said Patrick Reed was a -350. Look at the number for Harris English. He's -200. So Vegas thinks he's a better pick than Patrick Reed. That's how far he's come. I think Harris English is the great quiet golfer and loves to play quietly on Saturday and Sunday. Doesn't always scare people for the win, but we don't need him to. We just need him to finish top 20, and I'm going to put $20 on it. $20 on Harris English is my pick, top 20.
Yeah, I think Harris is going to be an interesting person to watch this year. He certainly took a huge step last year. I mean, he was first, second page of the leaderboard. It seemed like every week he was playing. So, is Harris, can he sustain that level of play, or can he incrementally now kind of continue to climb? He's to throw a win in there, right? But, Harris English has done some beautiful work over the last couple of years, has improved in basically every facet of his game. So he's a player that I'm interested to see how he does in 2021, and very well could get off to a good start here in Hawaii.
All right, our next pick, and this one, we've got to get into 2021 because I cannot hear you crow about it anymore, how you pick the winner of the Masters. We have to pick a winner every single week. Who do you like this week at the Plantation course?
Well, the winner of the 2021 Tournament of Champions, Sentry Tournament of Champions, is going to be the guy that missed the short putt last year, and that is Xander Schaffle. Xander loves this place for all of the reasons that I put out there in the model. He checks all of the boxes. I've said this before. A lot of the colleagues of Xander, they think he is the best player on the PGA Tour. He has no weaknesses. There's a lot of guys that play that Xander has the most talent and can go. And I hear that. And yet, Xander has 4 wins to this point. He's 27 years of age. He missed that short putt. He lost to JT last year, right? Who has 13 wins and is 27 years of age. And if I say Justin Thompson, Xander Schaffle, I think to the fan, they kind of like, okay. But the reality is there's a big gap, from a career standpoint to this point of their career. Xander has no weaknesses. JT, yes, a little better ball striker, can be inconsistent with the putter. This comes down to situational, right? The chips are down. I've got to make the putt to win. And it's time for Xander Schaffle now to build what's been on a very solid career to this point to start putting some wins together. I get it. Don't at me. It's hard to win on the PGA. I get it. Right. But Xander is that level of player. He puts himself there. He's missed a couple short putts. He could have 6 wins right now. I want to see him take the next step. I want to see him put a little dog in him like JT has. And when they get to that playoff this year, and it's Xander and it's JT, and it's probably going to be Patrick Reed. He was my 20 pick. He'll probably be in there too. Xander's going to get the job done. I think this would be a great spot for him. He loves this place. He's played well here. Get your W now. Let's get it to 5 wins, and then let's clip off a major later in the year.
You just clipped off one of my disclaimers. Don't add us when you go, well, you picked this guy and he didn't win. I'm telling you, if you pick one winner in an entire PGA Tour season, you've really done something. This is where you really have to, almost like a 0.25%, maybe less than that when you talk about bet size. These are what we consider prop bets. And I don't condone actually betting plus 1,000, plus 600. But that's how this game is played.
That's right.
We're going to pick who we believe. Now, if Xander would have made that putt last year, he would have gone back to back. Am I right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of synergy in how you're picking your winner this year and how I'm picking my winner this year. Because for the first time in 10 years, I'm going with the guy that has that dog in him. I'm going with the guy that actually wanted to win the father-son shootout 3 weeks ago.
No.
You want to talk about the QBE?
No.
You want to talk about the father and son raising
part of
that
the research.
trophy, walking down that aisle with his dad, just like we saw a year ago. The camera went from Justin to his dad and back to Justin. We're going to see it again, back-to-back tournaments. Justin Thomas goes back-to-back 2 years in a row. Now, before I brag about this, it's only plus 600. So if you're going to bet on this, I would say bet a little bit and just use bragging rights and not financial rights, because you're not going to get rich with this pick, but you will win. And in my world, in the cash out with the coaches world, that is priceless.
Hey, careful of that limb that you're out on right now, that with that win bet with Justin Thomas. I mean, goodness gracious. Let me guess, your wild card is Dustin Johnson to win.
Close. Speaking of wild card, it is time for our 5th pick. This can be any pick on the, by the way, my Justin Thomas was $20. Victor Hovland, or Victor Hovland, our wild card pick, Who do you got?
Well, I spoke to Victor Hovland's coach on the Stripe Show podcast that comes out on Wednesday, Jeff Smith, and anyway.
Of course you did.
You know, I had Hideki Matsuyama down as my wild card pick. I got $15 left, by the way. I put 25 on Xander to win. So I've got 15 left, and I was going to put 15 on Hideki to win. I feel really good about Hideki here, but I switched it, and I'm going with Patrick Cantley. And the reason that I'm going 15 on Cantley to win at plus 1,600, you know, he won the Zozo, right, in October, which wasn't too long ago. I think he's playing some good golf, worked with Jamie Mulligan. I go back to his play here last year where he finished 4th, and he had a really bad round on Saturday. He shot 73, drove it horrifically, and he still finished 4th. I think this venue is really good for Patrick Cantley. And, you know, I try to stay close to that model. Spend a lot of time in that model, coach, putting the data in, and then it spits out. And then you got to stay close to it. What is it telling you? And Cantley's name is right there. I mean, all those things that I talked about, all these extra elements that you have to manage this week, I think Patrick Cantley checks those boxes. So I'm going to put a little additional down on a win bet. Patrick Cantley, $15 to get it done. But I like Hideki too. I like Hideki.
Wow. So you're literally giving $15 away. You do realize that, right? By doing 2 win bets, 1 bet can't win. So I don't know if you figured that out.
I'm just giving him some additional things to think about.
That's okay. That's okay. And I like the fact that you did this. The reason that I have Patrick Cantley in my always fade category now is because when I win a bet, I want to be able to celebrate with the guy who wins the bet for me. And until Patrick Cantley understands that you need to show me some emotion, I need to know that it matters to you, I will never bet on him. Ever. Always fade Patrick Cantley. You heard it from the coach first. My wild card, I already gave it away, is the guy who was playing red hot in the fall. He won in the fall. Then he traveled all the way halfway across the world, and I thought sure that he would lay an egg in the last event on the European Tour. Not only did he not lay an egg, he damn near almost won the tournament. So I think Victor Hovland is one of these young cats who comes into every single tournament and says, not only can I win, but I want to have a high finish. He doesn't like the fact that he was kind of kept out of everything when Morikawa and Wolf were being celebrated and being allowed to play in everything. He says, that's never going to happen again. I've got Viktor Hovland, top 10. It's plus money. I'm giving people value. Plus 120. Top 10. I'm putting $15 on it, but I think this is a lock for my wild card pick. A lock.
First time, right? First time to see the course. Now, Morikawa was there last year, first time, finished 7th. So it's he's certainly there. I think Hovland's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised this year to see plus 10 yards on Hovland's driver. I know he's working on distance right now, which would be huge for him. And I think he's making some gains in short game as well. I don't think is necessarily a huge factor this week, but I do think his short game, which is clearly his weakness, look for some real improvement there. I said Hovland over Wolf and Morikawa in the preview because I really like the direction he's heading, and I think he's going to have a solid year.
As we wrap things up for our first show of 2021, what do you think the winning score will be this week, considering where they say the wins are going to get to?
Well, we've seen minus 14 last year and then minus 22, I think, when JT won it the first time. We've seen Spieth go minus 30. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the winds, 15 miles an hour. I mean, these guys give me minus 18.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's going to get at least a 20.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys know how to play the course and they know how to run it. And I was watching, and I think you commented on it. Justin Thomas put out a video talking about how at this course you need that low stinger and you got to be able to pull it out when you need it. And I thought that was a really smart video for him to put out, and then you to talk about his swing.
Yeah.
Because he understands how to play this course, obviously winning and playing very well here the last couple of years.
Do you like 20 under?
I think at least 20, like between 20 and 22, I think is what's going to win.
I like 18 to 20, somewhere in there. That's where I'll go with. And the wins, 15, 20, sustain. You get 14 was last year, so it'll be interesting to see. I'm hoping for 20 plus. Actually, let me take a step back. Cantley as my win. I'm probably hoping for 18, 19 for him as a win. And even for Xander, you start getting into that 23, 24. Now I think we're getting into that JT, DJ, right, conversation. Spieth, blitzed it at minus 30. So anyway, hey, show me the ocean. Show me the elevation change. I'm ready to play some golf in Hawaii and let's get it going.
And it's nighttime golf, which is awesome. Great. Nighttime golf for us, wherever we live. Don't forget, follow Travis Fulton and Sports Pub Media for all of your golf instructions, for all your golf betting needs. And let's grow the platform, grow his business, and grow this show, Cash Out with the Coaches, and also at the Coach Rules for everything that I'm doing as well. It's going to be a big year, buddy. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. I am too. I like my bets. Hopefully give the guys some things to think about as they look to put maybe a few bucks down on a win bet, head-to-head. I like my start here. I fully anticipate next week coming back and celebrating into week 2.
All right, send us your picks. Cash Out Coaches on Twitter. Play along with us. Beat us. Try and beat us. That's what we want you to do. For Travis Fulton, for our incredible partner, Sports Pub Media, and our great producer, Cody Merrow, I am the coach. This is the only place for your golf betting needs and the only place that every single week you're going to cash out with the coaches.
See ya.